And now there's questions about who's pushing this. We know that Soros is funneling money that's pushed this. We know that the Communists for America are involved with this. And so I think they're all real concerns about how this is going to go. And bear in mind, many of these are the same people who've been leading the anti-ICE protests that have, in some cases, turned violent.
But what's wrong with, even if George Soros were funding it, what's wrong with that?
Abby Phillip on her CNN show Table for Five went up against MAGA pundits Lydia Moynihan and Tim Parrish. The topic of discussion was the No Kings protests and Republicans and MAGA clutching their pearls over these protests. We're going to take a look at these clips from Abby Phillip's show on CNN. She was also joined by Anna Navarro. I want to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
Now, this will certainly be one crowd size that gets Donald Trump's attention. Today, across America, thousands upon thousands say they're protesting the president's actions and speaking up for the First Amendment. Organizers call it No Kings, accusing Trump of acting like a monarch. Republicans all week, though, have chosen to call it something pretty different.
Hate America rally.
Hate America rally.
Hate America rally.
We call it the Hate America rally.
The farthest left, the hardest core, the most unhinged in the Democratic Party.
This will be a Soros paid for protest where his professional protesters show up.
It's all the pro-Hamas wing and the Antifa people. They're all coming out.
The rallies also produce a noteworthy split screen. The government is still shut down. And not only is there no end in sight, but neither side is even talking to each other. In fact, the House isn't in session right now. And while federal workers aren't getting their paychecks, over at the White House, Trump hosted a fancy dinner in honor of donors to his $250 million ballroom. I can't figure out, and Lydia, maybe you can help me with this, why all of a sudden is this No Kings rally so triggering to Republicans? There was one before, and it kind of passed almost without much notice, at least among Republicans. What is it about this one that is so problematic?
Bear in mind, no one is challenging anyone's right to protest, but you mentioned there was a previous No Kings protest. Somebody actually died because there weren't any safety precautions that were taken. Somebody brought a gun and was shot. So I think Republicans are worried about the safety of protesters both on the right and the left who are involved with this. And now there's questions about who's pushing this. We know that Soros is funneling money that's pushed this. We know that the Communists for America are involved with this. And so I think they're all real concerns about how this is going to go. And bear in mind, many of these are the same people who've been leading the anti-ICE protests that have, in some cases, turned violent.
But what's wrong with, even if George Soros were funding it, what's wrong with that? I mean, this is America. He's not allowed to fund a protest?
People are absolutely allowed to protest, but bear in mind, this is stemming in part from an ideology that's challenging the duly elected president.
I mean, again, what is wrong with that? I mean, what is the problem?
And bear in mind, no one is saying this shouldn't happen. People are allowed to protest freely.
Yeah, I guess that's the part.
Also allows Republicans to say, I don't like it.
I'm just not understanding why all of a sudden it's, traitorous to go out in the streets and protest the president when that's, in fact, what you're allowed to do in this country.
Yeah, no one, I want to reiterate, no one is challenging the idea that people can go peacefully gather and protest. That's not an issue. What we are saying is we want people to do so peacefully. We don't want them to burn things down. We don't want someone to get shot on the streets. Last time they had this protest, there was the military parade, if you remember, that was happening. So it kind of fell on deaf ears and it didn't get covered as much. But yeah, people can go protest. People can do whatever they want. But when you trace the dollars and you trace the support, it does go back to some left extremist groups, Antifa, pro-Hamas groups that are in fact putting
There's been no evidence of that, by the way.
There actually is. There's federal reports suggesting that they may be linked to it.
Wait. Sorry. We've said no one's challenging.
I want to stop here for just a moment. So when like this Lydia says here to Abby Phillip, well, nobody's saying that they don't have a right to protest. Everybody has a right to protest, but there should be nothing after the but. It should just be everyone has a right to protest. That's what America is. And I don't believe that MAGA actually believes in protest. I think MAGA Mike Johnson and all of these other MAGA pundits and everything, if they were around in the 1700s, they would have been saying, how dare you protest against our king? And look at all of these terrorists throwing the tea in the harbor. That's where they would be. And it's so appropriate that they say No Kings, that it's actually called the No Kings rally, because these people would love to have a king, these MAGA pundits that go on Abby Phillip's shows every night, or in this case, Saturday morning. And when she says there, well, we just want it to be safe for the protesters. The MAGA doesn't give a damn about the protesters. They would love nothing more if just the police mowed them all down. And she says, oh, someone got shot. There was someone shot out of how many millions of people that protested the first time around, the first No Kings protest? It comes down to they do not agree with protesting. They don't think that anyone should ever be questioning the dear leader, Donald Trump. We see it from Scott Jennings, Ben Ferguson, any of these other MAGA clowns that go on Abby Phillip's show. They think you should shut up, let the Republicans do whatever they want, and that's it. And also, when they call it the Hate America rally, and they say, oh, it's Antifa and Hamas and these people that hate America. It's not true, but let's say every single one of the millions of people that are out protesting during this rally, let's say every single one of those people is Antifa and Hamas and they hate America. If they do it peacefully, they have the right to do that. This is America. People can protest anything they want to as long as they do it peacefully. But MAGA does not believe in that. They demonstrate it over and over and over again on Abby Phillip's shows.
Right to protest. And yet, what I heard from Republican leaders this week is that the protesters were terrorists. I heard them constantly, from the Speaker of the House to U.S. senators to Trump cabinet members, equating the protesters with Antifa. Now, those would be bad words in any other circumstance because it's First Amendment protected speech, and saying it's terrorism, that's a morally wrong thing to do. But this is worse than that because just last month, this administration designated Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization.
Do you disagree with that?
They are
Good.
Yes, I do. They are equating protesters with terrorists, and by equating protesters with terrorists, they're creating a chilling effect, and they're opening the aperture to investigate them. I'll tell you why. NSPM 7, National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, that was passed by the White House, issued by the White House last month, says that people who directly or indirectly support those domestic terrorist organizations can be investigated. By that standard, they're saying that protesters and people who organize protests where Antifa might show up could be investigated. And then this week, the administration took control or made moves to take control of the criminal division of the IRS. This would be like if George W. Bush had said Code Pink was Al-Qaeda, or people protesting the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were associated with the Islamic State.
I think that's a stretch. I think that people who do these protests, that do them peacefully and they make their voices known, is okay. When you get to the place where you're burning stuff down and you're destroying cities, that's another issue. And when you trace back and you look at who support these groups, who's organizing these events, it's absolutely linked to people who've done the things that I just mentioned.
Let me just say, I'm at this table. I actually went to the No Kings rally in June. To me, they were organically created. People chose to go because they are unhappy with what's happening in this country. I think there's much more unhappiness today, even than there was back in June. What I saw was people of all creeds, all ages, people with different backgrounds, all coming together and exercising their First Amendment right of assembly and of freedom of speech. I think that at a time when people feel that the government, some people in this country feel the government is bullying them into silence and fear. This is a way of showing that we are not afraid. I did not go because Soros told me to go. I did not go because the communists told me to go. I went as an American to exercise my rights. I didn't see any of the things that you all are suggesting.
If you were really fearful about fascism, you would not be allowed to protest. That's the irony in all of this, is that people are allowed to demonstrate freely.
Totally
Republicans
true.
are 100% okay with that.
Wait.
It kind of undermines their whole point. Meanwhile, they have signs that say Trump is a Nazi.
So what?
I think you're so right that
by the way, his vice president called him a Nazi too.
The fact of protesting is a demonstration of people's rights in a democracy. But you just said Republicans have no problem with it, and yet they've spent the entire week demonizing people.
There were like 4 sound bites. Sean Duffy, by the way, I actually have a quote from another Trump cabinet member, said, "I'm all about free speech. I'm all about protest. It's the great American way. I'm concerned about who's paying for it and who's organizing it."
It doesn't matter who paid for it or who is organizing it, and that's what Abby Phillip obviously is trying to make this point to these people on here. But it comes down to what Anna Navarro said was spot on. It ultimately comes down to they don't support protesting of any kind unless it's January 6th. And they also can't wrap their heads around the idea that everyone isn't like them, worshiping the God King, thinking everything that Donald Trump is doing is great. This is completely anecdotal, but I talked to a guy that I know who lives in my town and I went to school with, and he's a hardcore MAGA guy. And I was telling him that I, knew several people, older people in their 70s, who were going to the No Kings rally. And I was like, these people aren't terrorists. One of them was a Vietnam veteran. I said, these are people who they don't look at the country the way you do. They're opposed to what Donald Trump is doing. Well, anybody that would go to that would either have, he said, who's paying them? I said, nobody. And he said, well, then they're mentally ill. So I said, so anybody who disagrees with you and is upset with this administration is being paid or they're mentally ill. And he said, well, or they're going there to hook up. And I said, you think these people in their 70s are going there to hook up? Yeah. These are really weird people. And I said, okay, so what percentage of Democrats or people on the left or progressives would you say are mentally ill? And he said, oh, probably about 50%. And I said, okay, what percentage of people who support Donald Trump would you say are mentally ill? 0. And I said, I have a psychology degree, and I don't really think that mental illness is tied to political views in quite the way that this guy thinks. But I think, again, that's just one person who I know who is kind of nuts. But I do think he's indicative of the thinking of the right. Well, anybody who would oppose what we're doing in any way has to hate America. They have to be a terrorist. They have to be Hamas. They have to be whatever, because any normal, decent person would be in support of what Donald Trump is doing. I think that's a lot of it, honestly. But let me know what you think about all of this. Do you agree with Abby Phillip? I mean, to me, this is the most American thing possible, is to go out and peacefully protest anything. It doesn't matter if it's the president, anything that a person is upset about or disagrees with. They have the right in our country to peacefully protest. But I don't think MAGA supports that. Let me know what you think about what Abby Phillip had to say, what Ana Navarro had to say, or any of these MAGA pundits on her show. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.